even Latin artists like Bad Bunny wearing dresses and all this. And these are everybody that I've mentioned, I've already exposed for using occult imagery. And, we can argue that the label is the one behind the imagery, but it doesn't change the fact that if they're involved with the label and they're pushing this, they're still involved,
Mm.
Now, you mentioned you worked with Whitney Houston at a point, right?
Right.
I don't know if you've heard of the speculations that what happened to her wasn't her on her own free will. It wasn't something that she did to herself.
Yes, Whitney died on 2/11, February 11th, 2012, in a bathtub. The bathtub represents rebirth. That's what it represents. And mind you, 2/11, 11/11, that also represents rebirth and mind activation, transformation. So all of this was a ritual. It was all esoteric. We're going to get more into the bathtub aspect because it represents the understanding of the worship of Osiris, who was pretty much killed by Seth or Shem. Shem killed Nimrod because Nimrod represents Osiris, cut him up into pieces. And in mythology, it's told that Isis assembled his body parts back together and mummified him, put him in a coffin, and he was reborn into Horus. And also Osiris, the god of the underworld. That's where the mummies come from. It comes from the worship of Osiris. So the understanding of the bathtub is correlative, is connected. It goes back to that.
Have you heard anything like that? And do you believe that what happened to Whitney Houston was, her accidental, or do you believe that there was something nefarious happening there?
I don't know. Whitney Houston was amazing to work with. She was so down to earth. She was so humble. And she would, even though that she struggled with substances, she was still so God-fearing, and she was always preaching and wanting to pray with you. And she was amazing. And it was so sad to see what was happening. What I think is weird is that she died in a bathtub, and so did her daughter. Like, what are the chances?
Yeah, now that's crazy. Like, they both died the same way from quote unquote overdose in the bathtub. Obviously, it was a ritual. It represented rebirth, represented the worship of Osiris, who was mummified and put in a coffin. The bathtub represents a coffin. That's what it represents. Going into rebirth. So eerie that they both died in a bathtub. Like, what? Just crazy. But this is the bathtub of Miss Bobby Christina, Whitney Houston's daughter. So all we have to do is put things in context, and we understand that the worship system, the belief system, the pagan inspiration is real. These people are Luciferians. That's just what it is. And aside from that, Whitney Houston was a beautiful, beautiful woman. She just was beautiful, This right here is NLE Choppa paying homage to the image that was taken for Mr. Tupac Shakur, where he had the chains, in his lower regions. This represents him being a sex slave, believe it or not. He's a beta male sex slave. That's what he is, believe it or not. That's why he pushes the whole sex thing so hard, because he's a sex slave in the entertainment industry. He's being passed around. So was Tupac Shakur, allegedly. But it just is what it is, man. You got to put two and two together. You got to understand certain things about the entertainment industry, just when it comes to certain aspects that people don't consider, but it's a factor, This was the inspiration for the NLE Choppa pick. You see Tupac Shakur in the bathtub with the chains around his lower regions. It represents rebirth just in regards to the overall conveyance. But when it comes to the chains covering his lower regions, that represents him being a sex slave. But you see him crossing his hands a little bit. That's supposed to give off that energy of the worship of Osiris. Remember, Osiris is depicted with the X. And as I said, the bathtub, the whole understanding goes back to Osiris. So this right here is letting you know even further. This is further proving my point. This goes into the worship of Osiris. And it's another image where he's covering his face, with his arms crossed to further go into that energy of the Osirian worship. Eminem right here in the bathtub full of blood, Luciferian. And he had a song called 3 a.m. Just going back to when we mentioned the whole Rihanna thing where she was signed 3 a.m. at 3 a.m. in the damn morning in a hotel room at 16 years old. Just crazy. But Eminem right here in the bathtub full of blood, going into the worship of Osiris. And also the blood, it represents death. Osiris was the god of the underworld, the god of death, and also the sun god, because he was reincarnated into Horus. And also, as Osiris, he was one who was known as the sun god. That's why Christmas is in veneration of Osiris, because the lights represent the element of sun god worship, enlightenment. Justin Bieber, he's just letting you know that he's also one who partook in the bathtub ritual. Sam Smith, and notice the jacket kind of giving off that checkerboard vibe, the Masonic element, the principles. And we already understand what this person is a part of just when it comes to, the sexual proclivities. He's a homosexual. This is why he's in the tub in his fashion. Just when it comes to the image that you see in the right hand, on the lower right hand corner, it's like, come on, bro. What's going on? Now, this was on the set of Beyonce's video for Lemonade. I forget the song, but you see her in the black bathtub, representing the worship of Osiris, and also the horse. The white horse represents Epona. She is the mother goddess figure in the entertainment industry, Miss Beyonce. Once again, as I said, this goes back to the worship of Osiris. Taylor Swift with her arms crossed in the bathtub full of diamonds. It's just like, this is just everywhere. Going back to the worship of Astarte, right? But when it comes to her arms being crossed, she's letting you know what this represents. It represents rebirth. It represents the worship of Osiris. As you can see, this right here is a depiction of the ancient Egyptian god. This is the ancient Egyptian version. He has his arms crossed. So this just lets you know, this further proves my point. This is Osiris. And the black represents, the aspect of the underworld. He was mummified.